Welcome to the Polygamer podcast, where gaming is for everyone. Join us as we expand the boundaries of the gaming community.
Hello and welcome to the Polygamer podcast, episode number 67 for Wednesday, June 28th, 2017. Today I'm super excited to be speaking with freelance writer, editor, and all-around nerd, Sarah LeBoeuf. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, good to be here.
It's great to have you here. We have known each other sort of tangentially in social media for a while. I've been in your PAX East panel audiences. You've been in mine. It's so exciting to finally connect with you.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I've been watching your panels and following you on Twitter. And yeah, it's good to... This is like the first time we've talked since, I want to say, PAX East 2016 or maybe 2017. I don't remember.
I think it was 16. I think I was on stage getting ready for my panel with Susan, and I saw you sitting in the front row, and I literally jumped off stage and said, "Oh my God, you're Sarah LeBoeuf."
Yes, that is what happened. I couldn't remember which year it was because they're all starting to blend together at this point.
They do. You've been coming to PAX East for a while now. Is that the closest PAX for you?
PAX, yeah. PAX East in Boston is about 5 hours by car or 1 hour by plane, depending on, what kind of travel mood I'm in. I'm in Philadelphia, so it's right there in the Northeast. That makes it pretty easy for me.
Excellent. And I've seen you on panels for all these different events, talking about mental health, talking about women in gaming. How is it that people find out about you? Are you just super well connected?
I don't know. I mean, part of it is being well connected. Part of it is making friends who are well connected and impressing them enough that they will recommend you to do all the things. But it's funny, like, I met Susan because I was hired at The Escapist, like, out of sheer desperation right before E3 2011. I only knew Rush through her tangentially through Twitter, and that's how I got involved with Take This. And you literally never know how you're going to meet someone or become friends with them.
So I previously had Serenity Caldwell on this show, and she said that she has gotten every job she's ever had, such as at Macworld and iMore, all through Twitter networking. It sounds like that's an effective medium for you as well.
It really is. It really is. Like, it's easy to dismiss Twitter and social media, but if you think it's dumb, you're probably just not doing it right. Like, I make friends on Twitter. I connect with the contacts I met through Twitter. I found job opportunities on Twitter. That's how I got connected with the Nerdist for E3 this year, because some work I had lined up fell through, and I just put myself out there and said, "Hey, I'm looking for work. These are my qualifications. Please contact me." And enough people I had worked with were kind enough to retweet it and say, Sarah does great work, like, etc., that I got a hit. It's a very useful tool if you use it right.
So you said when you were looking for E3 work, you just put your qualifications out there, and after having seen you at all these PAX panels and reading your articles for so many outlets, I have to assume that your qualifications are a mile long, but I've never actually understood, what exactly is it that you do? I mean, you do everything, but if you were to crystallize it into one thing, what do you do?
I call myself a writer and editor. By day, I'm a full-time copywriter and copy editor, and with a focus on technology and electronics. So I'm always, like, in the tech world, no matter what I'm doing. And then, I've been actively freelancing since about 2010, generally mostly video games. And so I wrote for The Escapist for 3 years. I covered like 4 E3s for them, and I was a news reporter for them for several years. And I've written for like Games Radar, Ars Technica, Digital Trends, Mashable, Now Nerdist, anything from reviews to previews to lists to editorials. So basically I will write anything about gaming.
Wow, and if I may ask, is that your full-time job? Do you work in the games industry?
No, my full-time job isn't in the games industry. I work for QVC, and I help shape the electronic voice on the website.
Wow, so that is the common theme. You definitely work in technology, regardless of whether it's your day job or freelancing.
Yes, definitely. I think I would get really bored otherwise.
Really bored working for just QVC or just video games?
I think, first and foremost, I've always wanted to be a writer, so I'm glad I get to do that regardless of what I'm writing, but technology is what really interests me. So that's where I want to be. And video games have always been a passion of mine since I was a little kid. So this is like a job, writing about games. That's something I didn't think really existed. I never gave it any real thought when I was reading GamePro as a kid to who was writing these articles. So being able to do that has pretty much been a dream come true.
Now, I have a lot of part-time jobs as well, and people always ask me, do you wish it was your full-time job? And for me, the answer is no, because I like doing a lot of different things part-time instead of one thing full-time. Is that true for you as well, or do you wish you could do the video game writing full-time?
It's a complicated question. I'd say, would I like to be writing about games full-time? Yeah, that would be great. I like if I had the right opportunity at the right place, but the opportunity to do lots of different things is really exciting. And I'll have a lot of assignments just sort of like come out of nowhere, and I like the life. Like I like the hustle, even though sometimes I'm really just too tired and I don't want to deal with it. Like overall, I like that I get to meet all these different people and do all these different things. So I'm pretty happy with how it is right now. But, in the future, anything goes.
And you've said how you can and will do almost anything for as far as writing in the games industry goes. Do you have favorite beats or topics or genres of article?
I really like trying to cover like off the beaten path indie games, things that like may not have been covered before or not a lot of people have seen yet. When I was covering news for the Escapists, I kind of became like the go-to Kickstarter person. But of course, you can't write about everything because you'll get 100 emails about various game Kickstarters a day. So, I would like pour through them and look at each game and see what was interesting about it and reach out to the creator if I thought it was worthwhile. And I really like that stuff because these are people who are just looking for an opportunity just to get their game out there. And if something catches my eye, I want to help them with that.
Yeah, it is such a crowded field, not only Kickstarter, but also Indiegogo, Fig.co, all these different crowdfunding websites for video games. The one time I tried to pitch a freelance story to the Escapists, it was about several games on Kickstarter that all had a common theme. And the response I got was basically, there are so many Kickstarters about games, we can't write about all of them.
Yeah, it's true. And it's like, it's really sad because I found that like once I had written a few articles that got some attention about various Kickstarters, then everyone wanted to send me their emails about their Kickstarters and get me to write about. And it's like, guys, I really wish you the best, but I cannot write about all these games. I'm sorry, I just can't.
I get the same deal now where I have covered a few indie games on my YouTube channel, and by a few I mean several dozen, and now like every indie game is crawling out of the woodwork to get covered by me, and I'm like, I can't play every game.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
So this was your first time writing for Nerdist, and you said that you got that by networking on Twitter. I saw your tweet on June 1st just saying, does anybody need an experienced freelancer? Contact me. I'm glad that worked out. What was it like writing for Nerdist, which of course has a storied reputation in the nerd community?
Well, that's the thing. They have this like great reputation, and I feel like with most writers, you're going to find some imposter syndrome in there where you start to think like, oh man, like why me? Like maybe I hope I can do this. What if I can't do this? And then I think, it didn't really register that it was kind of a big deal until I posted it on Facebook and like all my friends were like really excited for me. And I almost wanted to be like, whoa, guys, calm down. Well, I haven't even written anything yet. Let's just like see how this goes. But once I started to get into it, I just was, I feel like the tone of Nerdist is really similar to how I write naturally. So, once I started going, it felt great. And I'm really proud to have my work up there with Dan Casey, who was my editor, who was also at E3. And I got a chance to meet him in person while I was there. And, it just seems like we have similar, like mindsets about how to approach these previews. So, it felt really good. I hope we'll work together more in the future.
You briefly mentioned imposter syndrome, and that's something we've talked about before on this show. But for those who are just tuning in, can you give us a brief summation of what that means?
Yeah, it's basically when you don't think anything you've ever done is great, and you just got to the point where you are as a total fluke, and one day everyone's going to find out, and and then you're going to lose everything.
It must be very challenging to do your work while struggling with that.
Yeah, it's silly because, on the one hand, like, it's hard to approach it logically because it's illogical, but, yeah, it just, I feel like I've worked with so many amazing people, and there's no way I can compare to them. It's so intimidating. So I tend to, internally put myself down a little bit. But the thing is, like, all those people I admire, they're dealing with this too. Like, they're also thinking this, and sometimes we just have to bring each other back to reality. Like I said on Twitter a few weeks ago, when I was just not really feeling it, and I said, what if it's not imposter syndrome and I just suck? And one of my friends was just like, girl, please. And it's like that was just the reality check I needed to, get my head back in the game.
I mean, I can see how 1 or 2 successes might be flukes for some people, but how many successes do you have in the 8 years you've been freelancing? If you were a fake, I think we would have figured it out by now.
I don't know, man. What if you never know? Maybe I'm just really good at BSing my way through this. Who knows?
Oh no, I don't think so. I read your Nerdist coverage. It was quite good.
Thank you.
An organization like Nerdist, I have to assume that they have people who are going to E3, and you mentioned that your editor was there. Mm-hmm. Why do they need to hire freelancers?
Because editors tend to overbook themselves into oblivion when it comes to E3 scheduling, and I knew that in the final weeks before E3, that's the time when editors are looking at their schedule and saying, oh no, why did I do this to myself? So, and it's hard not to because there's so much to see, you're getting so many emails. And then once you sit down and start like looking at the calendar, looking at how much time you have to get from point A to point B, trying to figure out when you're actually going to have to have time to sit down and write this stuff, that's when it helps to, bring in a wingman. So, yeah, that's basically I was just picking up some of the slack.
It sounds like you've been to many E3s before that you've already gotten this down pat. How many E3s does this make for you?
This was number 9 for me.
Wow, is that 9 consecutive E3s?
It is 9 consecutive E3s, and it's amazing and exhausting. It was a childhood dream of mine to go to E3 ever since 1995 when I read about the first one in GamePro. So, being able to finally get there in 2009 was just as a member of the media, I've been in media every time, and that was just an amazing experience. It was very surreal to actually be there on an E3 show floor. And every year since, some people get super jaded, and I definitely am a little jaded, but I'm still always like excited to go, excited to see people, excited to see games. And it's an experience that I really just don't want to miss. I love just being a part of it.
Yeah, I went to 7 E3s between 96 and 03, and I had a fantastic time. It was also a dream come true, but it was also a lot of work, as you know from having covered it for all these different outlets, where you're overbooking yourself, running back to the hotel room or the press room, because when I was going, we didn't have Wi-Fi. It really didn't exist yet, so we had to find an Ethernet jack or a terminal somewhere that we could use. It was ridiculous.
Wow, that sounds unimaginable to me. But even with Wi-Fi, it's definitely the hardest week of the year work-wise. I mean, we work ourselves to the bone, but I think it's worth it in the end for the friendships we make and, getting to see people that you only see a few times a year at these sorts of things. And just getting to be a part of this industry and connecting fans with these games, it's worth it.
So it sounds like you really enjoy putting the spotlight on games that gamers might otherwise miss.
Yeah, I like that. I like AAA games too, don't get me wrong. I like, but I just basically I'm excited about games all the time. That doesn't mean I'm, looking at everything through rose-colored glasses, but I feel like there are always some games to be excited about at all times. And, I like connecting gamers with that sort of perspective.
So what were some of the highlights of E3 2017, whether it was particular games you played, conferences you went to, or just experiences you had with your colleagues?
There were some interesting things at E3 this year. So Bethesda put on an actual carnival before their meeting, their briefing. So the briefing itself was only 40 minutes. It was mostly video. It was fine, whatever. But for the people who got to attend in person, there was a Ferris wheel, there were all these different like sections themed after a different Bethesda game. So there was like Prey Bar, and then like a Doom area, and a Dishonored area. There were themed drinks and food, and it would just, that was on Sunday night, so it was basically like a beautiful like way to kick off the week. And that, it was just really fun, and it was really relaxing because no one was trying to work, no one trying to cover anything. We're just all there enjoying all the stuff that's going on, collecting the pins and drinking the drinks and eating the foods and going on the Ferris wheel. So that was really cool. On the show floor, I had a really fun time at Nintendo's booth. Everything I played, Super Mario Odyssey and Splatoon 2 and Mario plus Rabbids, and they were all super, super fun. And it's just like one of those appointments that when you see it on your schedule, you're really looking forward to that one. You know it's going to be good. And the other appointment I enjoyed the most was probably at Annapurna Interactive. They made What Remains of Edith Finch, which came out earlier this year, and I highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't played it. But they have this upcoming game that was shown off at Microsoft's briefing called The Artful Escape, which is kind of like a prog rock platformer with really cool graphics, and it was my favorite game of the show. They have a puzzle game called Gorogoa that looks amazing, and I played it twice now at 2 different shows, and every time I sort of tune out the outside world and just like get so into this game. And they have this really goofy one called Donut County, where you just control a giant hole in the ground that swallows up everything, and it's so simple, but it's really satisfying. And I talked to the creator, and even he didn't really understand it. He said, it started as a joke, but it turned out to be really fun. And I like that. I like that it's just like it's apologetically goofy and simple, but it's still really fun to play.
Wow, there is a lot in that response.
Oh, sorry.
No. This is great. The carnival sounds ridiculously fun. I think I saw a video of somebody riding the Ferris wheel. It just looked like an unapologetically fun time and great way to enter E3. But it also reminds me that a lot of reporters and editors in the video games industry are themselves hobbyists, enthusiasts, gamers. I once had somebody tell me, and I found this very rude and condescending, that there is no such thing as a video game reporter. They're just video game fanboys and girls because we're too devoted and attached to the medium we're covering to really be unbiased about it. And when I hear Bethesda like wooing reporters with Ferris wheels and cotton candy, it really is quite the spectacle, E3. It doesn't seem like something I would find at another convention like CES, although I've never been to CES, so I don't know.
I have been to CES, and it's very different. It's very straightforward, very, very serious, lots of buyers in suits, very busy. And it's not the same, but like, first of all, whoever said that to you was a jerk. Because, like, you can like something and still report on it objectively, as objectively as possible. And you're right, it's very insulting to say that, but I don't know. And the thing about Bethesda's Carnival was, like, there were no games there to cover. So it wasn't, like, strictly for the point of, like, getting, let's get the journalists liquored up and having fun. So they, give us good previews. It was just about the fun. I mean, it wasn't even all media there. They had a standby line for anyone from the public could just walk up and get in that line. It was like there were tons of people there who weren't writing about video games. It was just fun.
Yeah, and that's what I think games are all about. And you make a good point that we should be enthusiastic about whatever we're writing about, because I have to imagine sports writers love baseball, and people who cover Capitol Hill must have some fascination with politics. I would hate to think that you're only writing about the things you hate.
Well, yeah, I mean, that doesn't even make sense. I mean, if you need a writer to write about video games and you hire someone who hates video games, then you're doing a disservice to your readers, because, do you really want to read the words of someone who hates video games when you're trying to figure out, like, which game to buy with your next paycheck, or what happened to E3? I mean, yeah, I don't understand, like, the opposition to enthusiasm that I see in some people, but I've never let that stop me.
Right, and I think even within gaming, there are people who like or dislike certain things. For example, I may not be a very well-rounded writer because I don't cover sports games, but that's because I don't like sports. I love that other people do. It's a totally valid form of entertainment. It's just not for me, and so I'm not going to write about something I neither appreciate nor understand.
Yeah, and that's a lot, like, one of the reasons, previews tend to skew positive, and it's not because, like, we can't give anyone any criticism. It's because editors tend to assign you to things you know and like so that you have the proper context to evaluate this work in progress. So they could have sent me to go see Madden, but I don't like football. So it could have been the best Madden game of all time, and I wouldn't have known the difference. And that's not helping anyone, if I write about that. But they sent me to Nintendo, and I got sent to see some indie games because I said that's the sort of stuff I like, and I got to go see Wolfenstein because I love Wolfenstein, so I'm in a good place to judge how the sequel is looking. That's one of the reasons you see so many positive previews. I mean, aside from the fact that the developers have perfectly put together this vertical slice to be the best thing that they have to show, but it's just because writers tend to get assigned to things they know and like. So
that's a great point. I never thought of that. And you're right. Reviews do tend to be positive, and not just because people are playing the things that they know well, but me, for example, for two reasons. One is I don't like spending time playing games that suck, and so I'm not probably going to spend enough time writing about it as well. And two, I feel like it's a better service to the reader, where if they have 100 games to choose from, and I tell them one of the games is good, they can eliminate the other 99. But if I only tell them that one of those 100 games is bad, they still have to choose from the other 99, and I haven't really helped guide their purchase.
Yeah, that's a good point, too. I didn't even think of that.
Well, that's at least the excuse I make for myself as to why I don't play games that suck.
I have, been assigned reviews for games that suck before, and it happens. There are going to be times when you just have to do it, and it's a total drag. But, the hope is that most of the games you're playing will be not completely terrible, so.
Right. Some developers like to experiment and make games that you think you'll like. For example, I remember back in the PS1 day, I liked games by Psygnosis. I think that includes Lemmings and Wipeout. And then they made a game based on the movie Spice World. And I tried that because...
Oh, yeah!
Oh, I'm sorry. Is this something that you liked?
No, I just completely forgot that there was a Spice World game for PS1, but now it's all coming back to me.
I'm sorry to bring up that memory, because it was not a positive experience for me. I gotta say that after reviewing that game for Psygnosis, again, maybe I wasn't the target audience, just like I don't review sports games, maybe I should not have reviewed Spice World, but after playing that game and reviewing it, Psygnosis took me off their list and never sent me another game.
Well, that's just unfair. I mean, it happened, but it's just unfair. As long as you're, have put the work in and are giving, the most informed review that you can, that shouldn't happen. It does, but, yeah, you must have really skewered that game with good reason.
I normally wouldn't badmouth a developer for doing something that could be potentially unfair, but at the same time, they went defunct several years ago, so they don't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so I mean no harm to a studio that's still trying to get their games good coverage, and I'm sure that's all they were doing, and they just felt that investing further games in me was not worth their time. So that's the decision they made, and I don't begrudge them, because I lived longer than them anyway.
So well, there you go.
So speaking of studios that innovate, not all innovations flop as much as Psygnosis' Spice World. You saw a lot of innovation this year at Nintendo's booth at E3. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah. So, Nintendo is kind of a divisive topic because, some people don't like it and some people don't really care for the Mario series. They think the games are good for kids. They don't like that Nintendo sort of marches to its own beat. And a lot of times Nintendo does stuff that doesn't make sense, like still using friend codes, and I really can't defend that. But overall, I just have a lot of optimism where Nintendo is concerned. But I was especially excited to see them this year because I really haven't put my Switch down since it launched, and I really need something else to play for the Switch because I played about 150 hours of Zelda, and I got 3 gold stars in every Mario Kart course, and now I play that online every night. But I'm like, okay, I want something new. Let's see what's coming. And like the three big games they had at their booth, which were Mario Odyssey, Splatoon 2, and Mario Rabbids, were all super fun. I mean, granted, I only got about 15, 20 minutes with each of them, but they're all like, it was enough for me to be like, okay, yeah, I'm obviously gonna buy all three of these, and I can't wait. And I'm glad some of them are coming out soon because Odyssey isn't until holiday season.
It seems like Nintendo is. I mean, they've always sort of, as you said, marched to the beat of their own drum, but it seems like they are deviating significantly from their own history. Like the Zelda game that I've been playing for probably 100 hours since it came out and still haven't finished is not like any Zelda game I've ever played. And I haven't played Mario Odyssey, but it doesn't look like any Mario game I've ever played. And so
it doesn't. It's weird.
so even given Nintendo's history for innovation, they're even innovating on top of that, it sounds like?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like a lot of Nintendo's flagship games had the same sort of formula for decades. I mean, Zelda was always like, okay, it's 8 dungeons, and first you have the forest dungeon, and then you have the fire dungeon, and then you have the water dungeon, and like Mario sort of followed similar themes, like a similar world level structure, and if the content within is different. But it seems like this generation, they're ready to try different things, and like you said, Breath of the Wild is completely different than any Zelda game that came before it, and I was worried about it before it came out because I was like, I don't know, what if it doesn't feel like Zelda? But it does. And Mario Odyssey, I played the level in New Donk City, and it's just so silly, and it doesn't look anything like Mario, but it feels like Mario when you're playing it, and that's it's cool to be able to present like something new and something familiar at the same time. And I think Nintendo did a really good job with that.
Speaking of Mario, what is up with the Ubisoft crossover?
Oh, Mario Rabbids, which was probably my biggest surprise of the show. I mean, I did not see like a tactical, like Ubisoft published Mario game coming. I just did not expect that at all, and it's actually pretty fun. I played one level. It feels right. I just like, I don't know. It's hard to like even decide what to say about it because it's just like I never thought I would be playing a tactical strategy game with Mario and the Rabbids anytime soon.
Now, I've never actually played any of the Rabbids games. But it was not my understanding that there was like a tactical strategy game, because that makes me think of Command and Conquer, for example.
Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't played any of the Rabbids games either, but I think they were more like goofy and minigamey, and this is still plenty goofy. It's really funny. But yeah, the strategy it is completely new for both series, and it reminded me more of like XCOM. It's turn-based, and there are lots of elements on the level that might interfere with what you're doing. Like one of the levels I played had a giant chain chomp in the middle, and it would just attack anyone within range, whether it was your team or the bad guys, or just the structures you're using as cover. Like the chain chomp was gonna chain chomp. So it just added like this extra layer of stuff to look out for, and it just like it. I don't know, seeing the Rabbids in, costumes like Luigi and Princess Peach and Donkey Kong costumes, it's just like, it's just so silly. Like, how can you not see that and smile? Like, it's fun. It's just fun.
The reason you can see it and not smile is because video games are not supposed to be for kids anymore. Those kids have grown up, the ones who grew up with Nintendo, and now games are supposed to be violent and dark and broody.
Yeah, I mean, I like a shooty kind of game, sometimes too. But yeah, there's definitely nothing wrong with bright primary colors and, E ratings and something that's appropriate for everyone. I think like one of the things people don't really get is that all ages doesn't mean dumbed down for little kids. Like it just literally means, basically anyone can play this and enjoy it. And it doesn't matter if you're 10 or you're 60.
I don't see Pixar films getting the same bad rap that video games do. You can be an adult and go see a Pixar film and nobody chastises you for it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, no one, Like, no one gives you a hard time if you're going to see, like, Moana or something in the theaters, but for some reason it's like, oh, Mario's for little kids, Nintendo's for little kids, and it's like, well, maybe, like, a lot of us grew up on Nintendo, like I knew I did, and Super Mario Brothers was the first game I ever played, but that, like, that enjoyment I had, it hadn't gone away. It's still there. It's just, but the technology has evolved for Mario, and I've grown up, and I can still like it the same way.
Do you think that Nintendo gets an unfair pass because so many of the current generation of reporters and editors grew up playing with it and they're nostalgic for it?
I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I think a good reporter is not going to let that nostalgia cloud them. I mean, I can be plenty critical of Nintendo too when, like there were definitely some things in the last few years, and even with the Switch now, that have made me annoyed at them. But I don't know. I don't think they get like a free pass. I mean, I didn't see them getting a lot of good press last generation with the Wii U, so yeah, I don't know. I think if anything, like maybe this is just what I'm seeing, but if anything, I see a lot of sort of condescension and negativity on Nintendo, and I don't think anyone's like either purposely out to like put them down or raise them up, though. It just, everyone sees their situation in a totally different way.
And they are at an interesting intersection in the video games industry because last year the PS4 Pro came out, the Nintendo Switch, of course, just came out, and the Xbox One X is coming out later this year. It seems like everybody is iterating, or at least Sony and Microsoft are. They're trying to have the latest technology out the door. Nintendo, once again, is not competing in that arms race. Their system is underpowered compared to the competition. What do you think about how Sony and Microsoft are positioning themselves and the place that each of these three main competitors have in the coming holiday season?
Okay, so there are like two sides to this. So first of all, there's the side that we are really embedded in this industry. We know what's going on. We know what the latest technology is. So seeing what Sony and Microsoft are doing, it makes sense because people are upgrading to 4K TVs and they want more power. But then you have to like take a step back and think about the average consumer who, likes video games, but isn't going to shell out for a 4K TV just yet and doesn't really understand the difference between the Xbox One S and the Xbox One X because, like, who cares what a teraflop is? I think Microsoft is aiming to hit a very specific audience with the Xbox One X. I mean, it's got that $500 price point. That's always been tough for consoles. I really wish Sony had put a 4K Blu-ray player in the PS4 Pro. That didn't make any sense to me that they didn't. Like, it just gave them a disadvantage versus the Xbox One S on the, on that end. But, like, at the end of the day, like, they're going to sell and they're going to be fine. But the Switch is still sold out, and it's looking like it's going to be a very hot ticket item this holiday season. So, I think, but it's like you said, like Nintendo's not really trying to compete on graphics and technology. They're doing their own thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, like with the Wii U. But the Switch is really resonating with people. So I think they're going to continue to sell, like, regardless of the fact that there's no, 4K Switch console in the works.
I hope that they have overcome their marketing issues from the previous generation because I think a lot of people either didn't hear about the Wii U or they didn't know what it was. I remember speaking with a nurse at a hospital while I was in there, and he was telling me about all these PS4 games he is playing and how he was thinking about adding an Xbox One to his collection. And he asked me what games I play, and I said, oh, I'm playing so-and-so on the Wii U. And he said, what's the Wii U? And this was 3 years after the system came out.
Yeah, I had that same experience a lot. And, like, don't get me wrong, I actually loved my Wii U, and I got a lot of use out of it, but I would have very similar conversations where people didn't really understand what it was. The marketing at launch was very confusing. I know some people who just thought the tablet controller was just an accessory for the Wii. It's like they didn't get that it was a whole new console. And I remember the first E3 that Nintendo was talking about the Wii U and showing it off, they wouldn't show anyone the console. We could only look at, like, the tablet controller part. So I think that message got muddled right out of the gate with, and with the Wii, it was the opposite. Like, people understood it right away and thought it looked really fun. So I think they're doing much better with the Switch. that video they released a few months ago where like people are at parties playing together and stuff and like taking it from the dock to the handheld mode. Like I actually do that. I bring my Switch to work and one of my friends brings his Switch and we'll play like four-player Mario Kart with like two split screens on our lunch breaks. I bring it like in the car on road trips when it's my husband's turn to drive. I'll just like sit there and play Mario Kart or Zelda. And it works exactly as advertised. That's the thing. It's like it's really seamless to go from all these different modes. So, to me, it feels like that message is clearer, but it's harder for me to judge like what the average consumer is thinking because I'm not really, I'm just so embedded in this. I can't see it from another angle sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, same thing here. I really enjoyed my Wii U, but I recognize that people either didn't know what it was or they didn't understand why you would have a tablet component that was tethered to the TV and that you couldn't take in the car like the Switch does. I am curious, though, that you just mentioned playing split-screen Mario Kart on multiple wireless switches. Just today, for the first time, I played two-player Mario Kart on an undocked Switch, so on the handheld screen, and I found it functional, but everything about it was small. The screen was small, the Joy-Cons were small. I don't know how you can tolerate that for extended periods, because when you can connect it to an HD TV, that's such a superior experience.
Well, it is, yeah. Like, obviously, that's like, for something like Mario Kart, if you're going to have split screen, like, yeah, that's a superior experience. But the thing about the Switch is maybe you don't always have that access. And, the first time I held just like a single Joy-Con in my hand sideways, I was like, what am I going to do with this? It's so small. But you just kind of get used to it, as far as I'm like, yeah, your portion of the screen on the portable Switch, like, it's very small, but you just sort of like learn to focus on what you're doing. So I think we had like, I'll play with the same group of friends at work, and like the first few races we were kind of getting a feel for it, but now, as soon as we bring it in, we set it up and we're in it, we're good to go, and we're just having fun for, until we have to go do actual work.
Oh no, not actual work.
Yeah.
And you're playing with the half a Joy-Con held sideways?
Yep.
Huh. I have not had a problem with that, but I've had my friends say that it's very small and their hands get cramped, and I wasn't sure if it's worth investing in, say, the Pro Controller.
I mean, to be fair, I have very small hands, but I haven't heard anyone else complain about hand cramps in real life. I mean, I don't have a Pro Controller yet. I'll probably pick one up, though, for Splatoon, just because they're making that really cool Pro Controller with the bright colors, and I like it. But yeah, I mean, if you're not feeling a single Joy-Con, then get a Pro Controller. That's the thing. There's so many ways you can use the Switch, so you can find something that works for you.
Yeah, I probably should. I haven't invested a lot in the accessories yet, partly because I'm just so obsessed with Zelda, and I'm still less than half done. So
yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah, have you finished it?
Yeah, I finished it. And I think I had like 6 shrines left.
Wow.
Which I'm gonna go back to when the DLC comes out next week.
Oh wow, is that next week already?
Yep. I've been waiting for a reason to get back in. So I did like almost everything there was to do, but I have a little bit more, side quest wise that I'm gonna finish off.
Yeah, I just finished my 50th shrine, defeated my second divine beast, and trying to avoid spoilers here, I just made it into the Lost Woods.
Oh, yay! Okay, yeah.
So I'm not yet strong enough to do what needs to be done in the Lost Woods, so I need to keep doing shrines.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, you gotta go get stronger.
Yeah, but that's okay with me, because I'm planning on... I'm not usually a completionist, but this game makes me want to photograph and collect everything and do every side shrine and main quest.
Right? Yeah, I just got like really into collecting all these things. I was like buying every single outfit I could find, even if it was like totally impractical and offered no benefits. I still wanted to like put it on and take a picture. Yeah, but then it just like I hunted obsessively for those shrines too, and they get like after you get about like 80 or 90 of them, they get so hard to find. Like the remaining ones, they're hidden pretty well.
I have not used my Sheikah sensor once to find shrines. I'm just coming across them organically. Are they hard to find even using the sensor?
Well, I think I put the sensor back on when I had about 90 of them found. So that helps like a little bit because a lot of times it'll start going off and you'll look around at something like you missed before. It's like, oh wait, that wall of rocks in that mountain over there looks like maybe I can blow it up. So I bet that's something. And it's like, otherwise I wouldn't have taken a second look. So that definitely helps. But even with that, then it's like you have this entire map to go to pour over, and there are 6 shrines left on the entire map. So it's like, where do you even start? You know, where do you go? So I would start like warping around to different places, just sort of wandering, like hoping for the best, looking for places on the map that looked like they didn't have a lot of activity in them. But, you know, eventually I was just like, you know what, I need to be Ganon and get on with my life. So I did.
Now, this is a question that we had when we were playing Zelda over here about the sensor. Is there a range limit on the sensor?
There probably is, but I don't know what it is.
Because I tried using the sensor to locate something that I knew existed in the world, but it didn't say that there was any, like, it didn't tell me a direction to go in. And so I'm wondering if maybe I was just way on the wrong side of the map and it couldn't pick it up at all.
Yeah, that's probably what happened.
Okay.
I don't know. I only used it for shrines, so.
Oh, okay. I've been using it for side quests. Like, find me 10 restless crickets. Well, I'm not going to do that without the sensor.
Oh, yeah. I would just buy them from Beetle. Like, I didn't feel like running around looking for
Oh, that's
crickets.
cheating.
No, it's not. It's fair and square. Everyone got their bugs. Everyone's happy.
That's true. You know, as long as everybody's happy in the end.
Yes.
All right, so we have had quite the love fest about Nintendo for the last 15 minutes. I want to get back to E3. Specifically, the website Feminist Frequency, associated with Anita Sarkeesian, posted a gender breakdown of the protagonists in video games. And they said that proportionately, there were a lot more female protagonists this year than there were last year, relative to the number of male protagonists. However, the number of male protagonists still dwarfs the number of female. I think this year it was like 3-1, whereas last year it was 12-1. Is this something that, unless you go looking for it, you notice when you're walking around the E3 show floor?
I think a lot of women who in this industry definitely notice when there are more women around, just because, like you said, it was 12-1 last year. So, you know, when there's when you're at a press conference and they're showing off a game with a woman protagonist, or even like a woman comes on stage to demonstrate it, you know, like I notice these things, you know, and it's because, like, you know, I am a woman and I've dealt with a lot of the sexist nonsense that happens in this industry, but you know, I don't think, maybe, like, I don't know if all men notice. I know some do, you know, some who are in tune with these kinds of things, but it definitely, I wasn't keeping track, but it really felt like there were just more women in the game this year. Like, there were more women highlighted overall, and that just, you know, it feels good. It's nice to be able to play a character like me sometimes. It's funny because whenever there's a game with a create a character, I always make a woman character, but my husband always makes a woman character, and I asked him why he does that, and he said, well, you know, I'm a straight white guy in real life, and I'm a straight white guy in every video game, so it's the only chance I get to do something different. So, you know, it's nice to see that there's more variety in, you know, in gaming protagonists, and like we still have a long way to go, not just like gender wise, but across a whole spectrum of diversity. But I'm glad we are making steps to get there.
Well, just before we started recording, you were talking about a game with a female protagonist that you've been playing lately, Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yes. I finally started this. It was on my pile of shame, you know, for months. But yeah, and I'm really loving it. And the thing is, like, it's not, like, I don't love it because there's a woman in it, but it just happened to be a really great game with a woman, and it's nice to have a protagonist who looks different than a lot of the protagonists I usually play. Like, you know, a lot of games, like, you know, Wolfenstein's a good example. Like, as much as I love the recent Wolfenstein games, but BJ looks like a pretty generic white guy, you know? And, like, a lot of games will have that same kind of similar protagonist. Or even in games like Fallout, when you can create your own character, the first thing they give you is the default male, who just, like, it's completely featureless, but that's who they use in all of their promos for the game. They don't use, like, a character created, like, woman character. So, yeah, I mean, I just, like, it's not something that specifically sways me one way or another toward the game, but it's something that's nice to see, because, like, why wouldn't we want different experiences?
No, I completely agree. I think that video games have untapped potential as a narrative medium. We're starting to see a lot more of that as the medium evolves. But in order to really realize that potential, we need more storytellers and more people's stories being told. And that means more diversity, both in the games industry as far as employees and creators and designers go, but also as protagonists.
Yeah, definitely. Just more diversity all around, so that these things just become normal, and then it's not a big deal. And then we're not like looking at how many women are in video games this year, because it's just it's so common that who even cares about it? It's not even worth mentioning. Like that's the point I would like to get to, when we don't even have to talk about it anymore because it's just a given. Like, of course this game has a woman protagonist. Like, of course this game has an LGBT protagonist. Like, of course this game has a person of color, like, in the lead role, and it becomes unremarkable. That's the place I would like to get to.
Which is funny, because that sounds like the argument that a lot of people would use against women in games, so that they would say, get your politics out of our games. We don't care about the protagonist as long as the game is good. And of course, that is a self-defeating argument, because if you don't care if the protagonist is male or female, why not let it be female?
Yeah, that's just like the dumbest things. Like, we don't care, but we're also going to argue about it a lot. It's like, no, that's like, it doesn't work like that. It's like, and it's also really easy to say that when like 99% of the people in all the media we consume look like you. And it's like, okay, dude, like, if you don't care, then just like let it happen. Like, being a woman is not a political choice. It's, so that's like, it's not even political. It's just that, like, I don't know. It's hard to like wrap my mind around it, around, people who are so adverse to like any sort of diversity. I mean, I don't even know how you live like that. Like, it's okay, white boys. Like, you still get like almost every protagonist and everything ever throughout history, but like, let us have a little bit, okay?
That is so true, and I have nothing more to add to that, because you said it so well. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
We've talked about female characters in video games, and of course there is an underrepresentation of women in the games industry as well. Does that underrepresentation extend to games journalism as well? Because I've seen a lot of women on games panels at PAX. I've been on some of those panels. So from that very, very small sample, it seems pretty even, pretty equal. Is that actually the case, that that women are pretty well represented among the ranks of games journalists?
It's hard to say, because like my experiences are so specific to where I've worked and the people I've hung out with, but I've written for multiple sites that had a woman editor-in-chief and still had more men on the staff overall, but like, women in very high editorial roles calling the shots, and no one really questioned it. Like, it's not like, oh no, women run this site, I can't work here. So I don't know if it's like completely equal, but there are a lot of ladies out there writing about games and talking about games on YouTube and Twitch and making their voices heard. And, it can be hard sometimes, because, like, when you're a woman writing about something that's been a male-dominated hobby or field, like, you open yourself up to all kinds of bullshit from outside. It's like, there's always going to be that guy who thinks women don't play video games, they're only doing this for attention, like, or whatever. Like, the logic some of them use doesn't resemble our Earth logic. So, they're definitely, like, I definitely know a lot of women in this field. I'm friends with a lot of women in this field. I have a lot of like really like great women friends who have taught me so much about writing about video games. Yeah, I mean, we're in there, and we're getting hired for the most part. There's still less of us, but I think, I don't know. I hope, like, as more generations sort of age into this, we see more and more women just being comfortable expressing themselves and not getting, like, scared away because of the toxic segment of the audience.
One thing that Susan Arndt pointed out to me on a panel at PAX East that we were on a few years ago is that although the gaming population is pretty evenly divided, 50-50 between the two binary genders, the number of people who engage with gaming-related media on the internet tends to skew male. And for example, if I were to look at my own YouTube channel's analytics, I have about 75,000 subscribers, and about 86% of them are men, which supports Susan's perspective. And so I feel like the women journalists that we do have, as you said, expose themselves to a lot of toxicity because their audience is not very diverse.
Yeah, it's just easier not to engage sometimes. Like, I rarely leave comments on articles I'm reading. I'm even on Facebook, like, a lot of times I want to say something and then I'll just be like, you know what, let's just like let it go. I don't want to deal with like the backlash. And when you have these ingrained stereotypes, like, everything you do can be perceived as reinforcing that stereotype. So, like, for example, like, if you're playing Call of Duty with a guy and he just does really terrible, you laugh about it, you say, oh man, you really sucked that time, like, no big deal. But if a woman is in that party with a bunch of strangers online and she does poorly, then all the guys think, I knew it. Girls are really bad at video games and they're only doing this for attention or to get guys or something. I know for me personally, I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me, there's always like concern about like inadvertently reinforcing negative stereotypes or what have you, or and also like sometimes there's just no way to win. There's just no way to win a conversation or an argument with someone who had already decided that you don't know what you're talking about. So like, there's no point in engaging with that.
You said that you don't tend to leave comments. What about on your own articles that you publish? Do you read the comments?
I do. A lot of times it depends on the community. So back in the day, The Escapist had, back when Susan was running it, it had a really great community, and there were some jerks in there, but they had really good comment moderators, so we would have some really good conversations in the comments. Like, sometimes I'd write something, and someone would say, like, oh, but did you, like, consider this angle? And I'd say, oh, no, that's really interesting, or thanks for bringing that up, or whatever. That would be fine. Most of the sites I write for now don't have a very big comment base, and it's kind of a relief. It's just like, it's just one less thing I have to worry about.
Yeah, I tend to read my own comments because I'm responsible for curating them, and I want to create a safe environment, so it's my job to take down the negative comments. But when I don't have that authority, and I'm reading somebody else's site, I think the internet wisdom of don't read the comment section prevails, and it's just safer to not go there.
Yeah, and it's sad because there are people reading these articles and taking time to comment on them, and they really want to have a dialogue. They really want to have a conversation about, like, what you've written, and they just get drowned out by all the assholes, and, like, it kind of sucks for them, but, that's, like, unfortunately, that's just the way it is, but that's just, like, another reason Twitter is really handy, because someone can read something I wrote and then at me on Twitter and say something, and, usually, like, trolls aren't going to go out of their way to find me outside of, like, an article or a comment box, but if they do, it's also much easier to block them on social media and never have to think about them again.
It's interesting to hear that because a lot of people criticize Twitter for not having good moderation tools for protecting people or enabling them to be protected and just to engage in intelligent discourse without being harassed.
Oh, yeah. I can't disagree with that. Like, I don't get the kind of, like, death threats and horrible harassment that some people I know have gotten, but, I've read the stories, and, like, yeah, I'm not saying Twitter is perfect. I'm saying it works for me, but it also, like, needs to do better to protect people, and it shouldn't be protecting fucking Nazis. It should be kicking them off its service.
No argument here. I mean, you can always go play the new Wolfenstein game and shoot some Nazis.
It's very satisfying to shoot Nazis, more so than ever.
Oh dear, somebody's going to listen to this and take that out of context.
Oh no.
So, one last question about E3. Assuming the show is anything like it was 20 years ago when I was going, it can be extremely overwhelming. Masses of people, hours of lines. It's in Los Angeles, so it's very hot. You're so surrounded by the games that you love that sometimes you forget to eat and drink. It's noisy. Where can people go to calm down and be quiet when at E3?
Oh, well, when they're at E3 and things are getting really overwhelming, you can go to the Take This AFK Room, which, as you know, started at PAX East back in, I want to say, 2013 or 2014. And we've, it's been at every PAX since then, and last year we brought it to E3, and it's this year especially, it was just a godsend because they let 15,000 members of the public in, and I really don't begrudge these fans like wanting to do this experience because they think it's a dream come true, but like adjustments were not made to accommodate them within. So it was hard for people working to do the work. It was hard for the fans to get much hands-on time or interactive time with games or developers. And it was like I've never seen the floor like it was this year. So having the AFK room there, it's like it's quiet and it's air conditioned. You know, there were coloring books. Then my good friend Dr. B, who's our resident, our head psychomancer, as he calls himself at Take This, like he's there to talk to you if you if you need any additional help or you just need to talk to someone. I've seen at PAX people come in and they're in distress, they're just panicking a little bit, and usually, they just need to like sit quietly for 20 minutes or so, or sometimes they just need to like talk to someone a little bit, and then they're good to go, and then they can just continue enjoying their show instead of letting the whole thing derail them.
Now, the AFK Room is run by Take This. What is your affiliation with that organization?
I've been on the advisory board since before we actually had an advisory board. I've been involved with them since this first came about in 2012. But I think, a colleague of ours in the gaming industry, he committed suicide, and Rush Pitts said something on Twitter about there needing to be some kind of resource for people in this industry. And I replied to him, agreeing with him. And then he asked me if I wanted to be involved in this thing he was trying to start. And I said, sure. I had no idea what it was going to be. It was just a Tumblr at first. And we would just share our own stories with anxiety and depression, PTSD, any kind of like mental illness related problems that we would have. And then it just kept growing, and that's entirely because of Russ and Susan, because they are amazing and just like would not let it stop. So, it went from being a Tumblr to a 501c3 charity with, an advisory board and officers and, all that legal stuff that's completely out of my realm of expertise. So usually what I do is I'll just I sit in on the conference calls and, I offer help where I can, and I try to volunteer with them any show I'm at. Like, I always try to leave a little room in my schedule to spend, a few hours in the AFK room or at the merch booth selling Take This merch. And then at E3, we were the featured charity at, like, a fancy industry party, so I was there all night, like, trying to get people to donate money for really cool swag bags and telling everyone about Take This. And it's super rewarding to be able to help other people, but it's also on a personal level, like, it's the reason I finally dealt with my anxiety and, like, went to a doctor about it after 17 years of not dealing with it. So, it's a literal lifesaver.
Wow, that is amazing. I have spoken to Susan and to Russ on this podcast about all the benefits that Take This brings to the gaming industry. I don't always hear from people who have personally been impacted by that organization. It's great to hear that they really do make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, they do. And I mean, I can say for myself, they've made a huge difference in my life. I've heard other people involved with them say similar things, and I've just seen some of the reactions we get, or sometimes I'll be just like sitting at the merch table at PAX and someone will come up and say, like, just thank you guys for what you do. And like, that's it. They just want to say hi and thank you, and maybe buy, Shield of Hope or something. But like, it seems to be reaching people, and I feel like in my life and there are more open conversations about mental illness anymore. It's not taboo for me anymore. Like, I'll talk about my anxiety all day long, and I used to worry that it would just make people uncomfortable, or they'd think I was, exaggerating for attention or not really get it, and those things all still happen. I just don't care anymore. Like, I don't care if you're uncomfortable if I talk about having anxiety. Like, you wouldn't be uncomfortable if I said, I have the flu, or I have a broken arm, so this is your issue to get over, and I'm just going to continue to be open about it because maybe someone within earshot is also struggling with this, and it will help them.
It's true. I have found similar empathy in online communities such as Post Secret, where you just share something that you've never told anybody, and it turns out other people have the same secret. Or you don't share your own, but you read other people's, and you see yourself in them, and you realize, maybe I'm not as alone as I thought.
Yeah, Susan and I had a great conversation about this. So before Take This, we had roomed together at like multiple conventions. We were pretty good friends, but neither of us knew the other was struggling with anxiety. And then the first PAX that we had in AFK Room, like I remember went out for lunch, and I just said, I never knew you were dealing with all of this. I thought you really had your shit together. And she was like, no, I don't have my shit together. I thought you had your shit together. And it was just entirely because like no one was being open about it when we could have been the entire time.
You had so much in common, and you didn't know to share it because society makes us afraid to do so.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm glad that you have found people like Susan and organizations like Take This, and that you are one of the people enabling that organization to exist and do the good work it does, because there is a need for it, not just in society in general, but especially in the games industry, where we are empowered and have the technology to enable us to hide from other people if we need to. Video games can bring people together, but it also allows us to isolate ourselves if we want to by staying at home and hiding behind the screen and only putting forward a curated experience, which, as you just said, can happen offline too. But if we can use those tools in that community as a force for good, then everybody wins.
Yes, exactly.
So where can we find Take This online for those who do want to make that connection?
Our website is takethis.org. We're also on Twitter and Facebook.
And what about yourself? You do so many different things. You must be everywhere online. If somebody wants to follow your many exciting adventures of Sarah LeBoeuf, where would they go?
Yeah, the best thing to do is follow me on Twitter at Sarah the Beef, all one word. And, I'll usually post things there.
Sarah the Beef. I don't know much about foreign languages. Is that what LeBoeuf means?
That is what LeBoeuf means. And yeah, no one can spell it or say it. So people have given me that nickname since like high school, and I'm just running with it.
It's something that I need to get over, because as a vegetarian, I kind of wish you were Sarah the Tofu.
That's fine. I hate tofu, so never.
Well, I can't in good faith ask you to change your identity to accommodate me, so I guess I'll just have to get over it.
Yeah.
And of course, there'll be a link in the show notes at polygamer.net with links to all your online identities, as well as your fantastic coverage of E3 2017 at The Nerdist. Is there anything else that we haven't covered today that you want to chat about?
This was pretty thorough. I just want to thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, my pleasure. I mean, you actually are the one who initiated the contact. We were following each other on Twitter, but then you reached out to me in addition to that about a month ago, and I'm like, hey, maybe there's an opportunity here to connect some more. So I invited you on the podcast, and you were happy to say yes. And you said that this is one of the first podcasts you've done in 3 years?
I want to say 3 years, yeah. I don't think I've done a podcast since the last Escapist. Last E3, I was with the Escapist, which was 2015. So, like, 2 years, I guess.
Yeah, the Escapist is not what it once was.
It sure is not.
Oh. Well, I'm glad that you continue to find new homes, and you are always welcome at Polygamer as well.
Oh, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sarah.
No problem. Have a good day.
This has been Polygamer, a Gamebits production. Find more episodes, read our blog, or send feedback at polygamer.net.